It was 2015, and the zombie genre seemed as dead as its namesake, until Techland's Dying Light came sprinting onto the scene, breathing fresh life into survival horror. The blend of parkour, visceral combat, and a gritty open world felt like the genre's natural evolution. It was a breakout hit for Techland, a studio that had clawed its way to relevance with sheer creativity and grit, rather than bending to the whims of a monolithic publisher. But success is a double-edged sword in this industry, and Dying Light 2 would soon find itself ensnared in a story as dark as its post-apocalyptic setting. When Techland announced Dying Light 2 in 2018, the pitch was irresistible. A world shaped by your choices, a dynamic ecosystem where every decision altered the fate of entire factions, and a narrative crafted by Chris Avellone, a writer known for his work on genre-defining RPGs like Fallout New Vegas. But by 2020, this narrative dream unraveled when allegations of misconduct against Avellone forced Techland to sever ties with him. His sudden removal left the development team scrambling, effectively tearing out the narrative spine of the game and requiring significant rewrites at a crucial stage of production. This was the first major sign that the ambitious vision promised at E3 2018 was already starting to fracture. Behind the curtain, whispers of creative differences and management turmoil were growing louder. Reports of internal conflict at Techland, compounded by the loss of a key narrative architect, painted a picture of a studio caught in a tug-of-war between its original vision and the harsh realities of game development deadlines. In early 2021, as if the situation wasn't precarious enough, Techland entered a new chapter when Tencent, the Chinese tech conglomerate, became a major stakeholder. The acquisition wasn't just a simple cash infusion. It marked a seismic shift in the game's direction. Tencent's business model, which thrives on live service games and microtransactions, was at odds with the kind of deep narrative-driven experience Dying Light 2 had been billed as. For Techland, this new partnership meant more than just additional funding. It was a recalibration of priorities. Techland's influence leaned heavily towards implementing monetization strategies designed to ensure long-term revenue. Internal sources suggested that key features, such as the branching choice consequence system, were scaled back in favor of developing more marketable content packages. What was once an ambitious RPG evolved into something that looked increasingly like a live service title, stripped of its core mechanics in favor of sustaining engagement metrics and microtransactions.
Dying Light 2 gives you the power to make choices that have massive consequences for the whole city, the sandbox space of our game. Turning on the pumps reveals a huge open-world region for you to explore, with new mechanics, quests, and things to find.
Dying Light 2 launched in February 2022, and for a brief, shimmering moment, it seemed like Techland had pulled it off. Critics praised the parkour mechanics in combat, but the cracks were impossible to ignore. It didn't take long for players to realize that the game's promised depth was a mirage. The choice consequence system, which had been the centerpiece of marketing campaigns, turned out to be far less impactful than expected, a casualty of shifting development priorities and Tencent's monetization-first approach. As the dust settled, the microtransactions began to seep in. First, it was cosmetic packs, harmless enough if a bit opportunistic. But soon, the floodgates opened. Seasonal events and DLC packs rolled out with the kind of speed that made it clear this wasn't about delivering meaningful expansions to the game's world. It was about extracting every possible dollar from a player base that had been promised something entirely different. The game's direction had been irreversibly altered, shaped by the insatiable hunger of a corporate behemoth more interested in revenue streams than in artistic integrity. The backlash was swift and pointed. Longtime fans of Techland who had been drawn in by the studio's reputation as a scrappy underdog felt betrayed. This wasn't the company that had delivered the innovative, player-driven experience of the first Dying Light. Instead, it was a hollowed-out shell, its creative vision sacrificed on the altar of profitability. The narrative of a world reacting to player choices had been replaced with a rotating storefront of digital trinkets. Techland's public response was boilerplate at best, a series of platitudes about listening to player feedback and vague promises for future updates. But it was clear from the roadmap that the focus had shifted permanently. The updates weren't about updating the narrative or expanding the lore, they were about monetizing the existing player base with new cosmetics and seasonal events designed to drive engagement, not storytelling. Today, Dying Light 2 stands as a stark reminder of the cost of unchecked corporate influence. It's not a failure by any conventional metric, the parkour is fluid, the combat satisfying, but it's a compromised vision. What was once pitched as an evolving, player-driven narrative became a polished but hollow experience, twisted by the demands of monetization. It's a cautionary tale for the industry at large, the story of a studio that reached too high only to be dragged down by the weight of investor expectations. Techland set out to build a game that was shaped by the choices of its players. Instead, it delivered a product shaped by the choices of its investors, a product more concerned with retaining players as consumers than engaging them as participants. In the end, Dying Light 2 may have brought zombies back to life, but the real horror lies in what was sacrificed behind the scenes, the creative soul of a game that could have been revolutionary, now forever chained to the endless churn of corporate profit margins. Dying Light 2 is neither a masterpiece nor a disaster. It's a living, evolving game that reflects the complex realities of modern game development. If you're looking for a highly polished, narratively groundbreaking experience, this may not be your best choice. But for those who value world exploration, visceral combat, and parkour mechanics, it's a world worth revisiting, especially as Techland continues to refine its vision. In the end, Dying Light 2's story is one of persistence, a studio learning from its missteps and striving to meet the expectations of its fans. Whether or not the journey is worth it is based on your willingness to embrace its flaws alongside of its strengths. Thank you for watching. My name is Voki, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.